What do you do when you have grown a successful construction company over a 30-year period and it's time for you to begin thinking about handing it off to the next generation? This is the question that I discuss with Shone Freeman, my guest on today's podcast episode. We welcome Shone back to the show. He is the president of SR Freeman, a residential custom framing company out of the Bay Area in California. And Shone and I have a great discussion about how he structured his succession plan in a way that fitted his mindset as far as what he wants to do with his business. We dive into the whys behind his succession plan and the challenges and the wins that he's experienced as he's thought through who he wants to give the company to, who's going to participate in that succession plan. We also talk about a variety of different types of succession plan structure and why he chose the particular one that he is using. So if you're thinking about succession planning in any way for your construction company, and by the way, you should be thinking about it, whether you intend to keep it for yourself or sell it or pass it on to the next generation, this episode of Construction Genius will be extremely helpful. Thanks again to Shone for joining me on today's show. If you like today's show, feel free to give us a review and a rating wherever you get your podcasts. Feel free to reach out to me via LinkedIn if you'd like to contact me with any feedback. I'm on LinkedIn at Eric Anderton and also at my website, ericanderton.com. You can contact me there. I'd love to interact with you, get your feedback on the show, and get to know you better. Appreciate you listening to Construction Genius today, and enjoy my interview with Shone.
This is Eric Anderton, and you're listening to Construction Genius, a leadership masterclass. Thomas Edison said that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. If you're a construction leader, you know all about the perspiration, and this show is all about the 1% inspiration that you can add to your hard work to help you to improve your leadership. Shone, welcome to Construction Genius.
Thanks, Eric. Happy to be here.
It's interesting. You've built a very successful business over the past 30 years. How many employees do you have at the moment?
Somewhere north of 225, maybe 250, somewhere in there.
You want to give us a rough idea of your revenues? Do you mind?
Yeah, we're somewhere over 30, 35 million, depending on the year.
Okay, so a residential custom framer doing 30 to 35 million a year. That's pretty impressive. But you've been doing it for 30 years. So like every business owner, you get to the point where, you know, your business, your working life at some point is limited. And you've started just to think about your succession plan in the last few years. Is that right?
I have. I've been thinking about a succession plan for probably more than 10 years, to be honest with you.
That's excellent. So why do you think it is that construction companies struggle to pass their business on to the next generation?
Well, it's a really layered thing. So based on my own experience, I think that there's emotional barriers, like people can't probably come to grips with how to do it and why to do it and who to give it to. I think there's this misnomer, there's this idea that the only way to get rid of your business is to sell it. And that can be a real long-term deal to find a buyer for a business.
Yep.
I think a lot of times there's a problem with a business that there's really no tangible assets. Basically you're buying a book of business. Unless you have a lot of really well-defined systems, which we do, there's really not a lot of value. A lot of guys think, well, I could go out and just do this whole thing myself, and they don't really understand what the assets of the business really are.
So then let me ask you that. Why isn't it that you just finish your run up and say, hey, it's been great, guys, see you later? Why is it that you want to pass your business on?
Well, that's a great question. So the answer is I really like my guys a lot. My guys are everything. And when I decide to wind it down, I want this same vehicle, the same business that's been good to me and my family to be able to help them and their families get what they want out of life. Also, I've create a lot of really nice relationships with clients. And I want this business to be able to help my clients continue on with what they want to do as well.
That's interesting. Your company is SR Freeman's. It's got that sort of personal touch to it. Do you have any family members who might be involved in the business in one degree or another?
I do. My brother, who's quite a bit younger than me, by the way, he's involved. He's my chief financial officer. So, he's very involved in the business. He's going to be part of the succession plan for sure. Beyond that, there is a possibility that my son may want to come into the business.
Okay. Is that something you're encouraging him to do? What are your thoughts on that? On your son following you the way in your footsteps?
I'm absolutely encouraging him, but with no pressure whatsoever. There's no pressure that he has to come into the business. The business is going to be fine with or without him. However, if he's interested in it, I think there's phenomenal opportunities that await, especially this generation.
Excellent. So it's interesting here about who to give it to or who to sell the business to. What process did you go through in terms of identifying people that you would be proud of passing the business on to?
Eric, I got guys that I work with shoulder to shoulder almost, and I know who the guys that get it done and aren't just lip service. So I've got a number of good guys that are interested in coming in, and this is a process. So as they start to become immersed in this process, they start to take on an ownership mentality, and they start to think about things a little bit differently. And I think that that's a benefit as well of a succession plan.
So let me ask you about that. What is the difference between an owner's mentality and an employee's mentality? What's that key difference, do you think?
Well, you've heard the one about the McMuffin, right? And the chicken, his commitment, and the pig, his commitment to that Egg McMuffin, right?
Oh, yeah.
The chicken's committed. The chicken's committed. But the pig, he's really committed, right? He gives his life for it. I think that's the difference.
So you're asking them to shift from being a chicken to being a pig?
That's right. Yeah. I mean,
do you get much squealing
when anything, you better commit.
Do you get much squealing when you begin to ask them that or begin to tell them that?
A little bit, but it's kind of good. It's good and bad, because if you hear a lot of squealing, then they're not committed. It forces you to really look at that aspect. If you want them in there, if they want to be in there.
Another thing that's interesting to me is the structure of a typical construction company. You've got to win work, you've got to plan work, you've got to build the work, and then you've got to get paid for the work. And when you started your company, I'm assuming that you probably did all four of those things quite extensively. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So as you're thinking about this transition, how have you processed the different parts of the business and the people who are in the business and who might take over those parts? Is it something that one person is going to take over and then just delegate out to others? Or are you sort of separating it out based on the different disciplines or silos in your organization?
Yeah, kind of a little mix of both. So when you set up a succession plan, or when I can only speak through my experience really, is on purpose and also just because it has to be, there's got to be a plan, but the plan has to have some flexibility, right? So the flexibility would be, look, my finance people, my brother, he does not know a thing about building. He knows the terms, he knows some of what we do, but if you put him out on a job site, he would not be very comfortable.
Right.
My other people, the people that deal with, some of the other things around the office, the insurances or the data entry or the human resources, none of them are really particularly comfortable out on a job site. So I think you have to delineate some of these duties and departmentalize them. But they're all important. And I think some of the problems that come up with, people that are in the field or say senior people think that some of these cross-departmental things are not as important to the business. Some of the office people think that, the field gets all the credit. And so you've got this constant battle. You're trying to make sure that everybody shares perspective on what the other side does and how important they are, and that we're all working together. I mean, that's got to be a struggle with everybody's business, I would imagine.
So what do you do to facilitate that understanding between the field and the office and making sure that everyone understands that we're all on the same page and we're all going in the same direction?
I wish there was a magic bullet, but I think you just have to put these things into conversation all the time.
Right.
It has to be a way that you have conversations and you say, well, I understand where you're coming from, but, you have to understand these other factors on the other side. Nobody's, having any favorites played in their favor or not. This is what's good for the business. This is why we're doing this, for an example, a generic example.
Yep. So how have you you're the big pig, so to speak, right? Going back to our analogy, how have you?
Well, you have to first call me that, Eric. I'll just.
I know. I know you a little bit, so I can call you a big pig. I know you wouldn't be offended, but I'm curious. One of the challenges I've found with succession plans is that the first generation, the folks who started the company, they just have a hard time letting go and trusting the next generation and empowering the next generation. Have you found that to be the case with yourself? And if so, what have you focused on to overcome some of that challenge?
Yeah, I have found that to be a little bit of a challenge, and how I've dealt with it and where I'm at now. I think it's this reward system, right? So if you're a doer and you're a worker and a guy who accomplishes things, and you go, hey, look, once I don't have this business, I'm not going to be any of that. You have to change your reward system. So, how do you reward yourself, and why is it important to give this thing away and have other people come in? I think it's really largely about coming to grips with that.
So it's having a consistent conversation with yourself, sort of a mindset shift to help you to release some of those things and empower other people.
Yeah. I mean, some of the questions that, I've dealt with myself is, what do I like more? Do I like control more, or do I like helping other people more? Do I like being the guy who's responsible for everything, or do I like teaching others so that they can learn how to be responsible too? There's countless questions like that I've gone over and over and over, and you kind of have to keep asking them and keep answering them in your own head and listening to the conversation. I mean, I'm kind of a nut, but that's just how I work through it in my own head.
No, I understand that. So going back to the structuring of the deal, so to speak, there's many ways that people try and skin the succession cat, the succession planning and the passing on of the business and making sure that, the first generation gets paid and the second generation is able to pay, if you know what I'm saying. What structure have you picked for your succession plan up to this point?
Well, I've kicked tires in a lot of different ways, and I don't know that there's a perfect one, but I've chosen is called a restricted stock unit plan. It's not like a plan you go down to your lawyer and you pick it off the shelf and you take it back to the office and install it. It's not like that. It's a plan, and you have to work through a lot of different possible scenarios, and hopefully when you hit a bump in the road, you can adjust some of these things inside the plan document. So this plan is a plan where I'm going to gift a big amount, 49%, let's just say, of the company to my key employees over the next 5 years.
Okay. When I hear the word gift, does that mean you're just giving it away for free? What's the thinking behind that?
It does mean that I'm giving it away for free, and it's an incredibly tough thing to wrestle with. But as you know, when you start a company and it's worth zero, and then over some time it's worth a lot of money compared to zero, you can't just, what do you do with it? No one's going to walk in here and pay $10 or $11 million for my business. I mean, they probably would, but it might take 3 to 5 to 10 years. Right. So the best people to buy my business are the people that help me build the business, I think, because the value of it is not in its tangible assets. It's my forklifts, my equipment, my trucks. It's really in what we do and how we think. This is a collection of people who are largely like-minded. We're not all the same. Right. We have different opinions, but we're all like-minded, and we all have a lot of values that are the same. And so that's why we succeed.
So why did you pick that, the restricted stock unit plan over another plan?
Well, like the ESOP, that's one where it's controversial, and I'm not a succession plan expert, but I know enough to probably be a little bit dangerous. So the ESOP's a plan where you sell the entire company to your staff, your employees, the chiefs, the cooks, the bottle washers. And
Right.
then when you do that, you walk down there to the bank and you get a loan for the company so that the company can buy the value of it from you, and then you can sail away to the Caribbean if that's what you want to do. And I don't really like that plan for a lot of different reasons. I don't think it's a plan that's destined to succeed. The RSU plan, the plan that I put into place, I think allows this company to become perpetual. So it allows what I'm going to do and how I get out of here to happen for the guys that I'm leaving the company to, and for the guys that they leave the company to. And I say guys generically, but the people. So I think this thing can be perpetual, in that it wouldn't be perpetual if it was really, really stacked one-sided. I think the plan has to be able to work, and it has to be able to be repeated.
So that's interesting, because it's almost as if the succession process that you choose is very much a reflection of how you think, and also a reflection of what's possible.
Yeah, I think what's possible is really what's exciting. I mean, for me, when I think about it, hey, do I want to be well off and not have any money problems? Absolutely. After that, who cares how much you have? For me, I care about, the people around me, the people that help me, the people that I can help, people that can help my family. I care about being plugged in and taking care of my people as much as I can. I think that's important.
That's interesting, though, because we're here in America, right? And at a certain point, how much money do you need? And where do you find your meaning from? And if you can identify that, then perhaps that can help you in terms of the way you structure your succession plan.
Yeah, I mean, this is tough, right? Because I don't want to sound like just all altruistic. I want to make a buck like anybody else.
Sure.
However, this is one of those things, like I said, these scripts that you keep kicking in your head. And I think the easiest way to say it is, how big is your ego? So if at the end of the day you have $30 million, is that better than having 20? If you have $70 million or $7 billion, is that better than having $3 billion? At some point in time, if you can pay your mortgage and you don't have to worry about how you're going to pay the PG&E bill the next day, I think there's more important things to spend your energy and your time working on.
That's interesting. So as you're going through the process right now, what are the things that you're focusing on with the people who you're passing the business on to in terms of developing them? How are you going through that development process?
Well, I meet often with my key people, and like I said, part of the RSU plan is flexibility. There's no defined roles that anybody's going to do, and I'm this ownership mentality sinks in. I'm seeing who rises up, who's going to be the CEO. I don't know yet. That could be one of 3 or 4 different people right now. And a couple of them are sleepers that, if you asked anybody else around here, they probably wouldn't pick out the same names that I would tell you.
So that's interesting. How do you, because I know that's something that folks struggle with, is who's going to be the leader, who's going to be the first among equals, and how do you handle the ego challenges around that? What have you found to be helpful for you in terms of handling people's egos as the succession plan structure begins to take shape?
Yeah, I think that's a good question, because for me, work ethic is one, ability to make good decisions is another one, and then we talk about how to base good decisions. Ability to assess risk and manage risk is another one. I mean, there's a bunch of themes that we talk about, and I put into the conversations that I have with these guys all the time.
So let me ask you this too. This is interesting, because the value of your business is very much based on the relationship with the customers that you have and the repeat business that they've done with you over the years. What have you done to, in the mind of your customers, begin to introduce them to this idea of the ownership shift that's going to happen? Because sometimes folks hoard relationships and they don't necessarily distribute them throughout the company. So are you doing anything to make sure that you're introducing your guys and gals to your key clients and building relationships with them?
Yeah, little by little as it changes. I mean, I haven't come out and made an APB or anything like that, an all points bulletin.
Right.
But sort of big meetings and presidents or the owners of other companies in there, then, or when the situation allows for it and it's not going to distract the conversation, I'll say, well, I'll introduce somebody as, my associate, but also he's a very important person or she's a very important person in the company. The succession plan conversation has more happened to some customers who I've known and worked with for years, and they sort of understand. So I just started installing the plan last year, so it hasn't totally gone out.
Are you working with any of your folks in terms of encouraging them to show up more like owners in the way that they conduct themselves? Have you had any conversations in those areas?
Yeah. I try not to do it. I try to do it in a low-key way, in a way that I want to train them to be observant. So it's okay to dress casual, talk casual, all that sort of stuff. But, you sort of have to be sensitive. I want you to be observant and be sensitive to what the situation calls for. So we can talk about dress, which is not super important, especially in today's society, but or speak. But, if you're sending an email to somebody who is educated and expects a lot, you better take care of the details, because that's what we do here. We take care of the details. So I want sentences constructed properly. I want them punctuated properly. I want you to use sir when it's the right time to use sir, and I don't want you to use sir when it's not the right time. There's little nuances that we always talk about.
That's interesting. So if someone is thinking about starting the succession planning process, what are some, based on your experience, what are some words of advice that you would give them? A construction company owner.
Read some books, talk to some people, talk to somebody who's done it before. Like I've talked to a lot of people. I've gone to a lot of seminars. I've gone to seminars that lawyers put on that want to sell you some services, right?
Right.
You learned a tidbit or a nugget here and there. And I think what I've learned the most is from people who have gone through it. So I've got a dear friend of mine who is in a company that's ESOP owned, and his dad was the founder, and now he's inherited this ESOP, and he hates it. And then I work with a company who is an ESOP owned company, and they love it. So
right.
I can't say that it's great, but I think it's very situational, and it really has a lot of dependency on the staff and the people that are involved.
So in terms of the time frame, what would you advise a time frame in terms of getting started relative to when you hope to be out of the business?
Give yourself some years, but you gotta put some goals on it, right? Because if you give yourself years and you think, oh well, there's plenty of time to get this done, then you just won't get anything going, and you won't get it started. You'll get nothing done. So I didn't do it because I want to retire. I don't know if I'll ever retire, but I probably will. So the reason I did it is because I wanted a plan in place so that if anything happened to me, unexpected or not unexpected, these guys knew what was going to happen. And when I say these guys, I mean my people, my clients, my vendors, everybody that we deal with knows that there's a plan in place, so nobody needs to panic. Everything's already been pre-worked out. There might be a little bump or so in the road, but we'll continue.
So what is the one thing at the moment, as you look at your succession plan, what's the one thing that's worrying you the most about it?
Well, that I haven't completed it. I mean, it's a costly thing, right? And because like I said, when you give something of value away, it creates a taxable event. And so right. I'm giving away half my company. I'm giving away half of the value that I've worked really hard to build. Okay. And I'm getting no monetary value in return for that per se. Right. So what I'm getting is a tax bill, and I'm going to have to take care of, because when you give away a certain amount of money and there's a tax bill, the people that you're giving this value, this stock, they may not even be able to afford the tax on what you're giving them.
Right.
So that's a hard thing. So putting that in place and making financial plans for that, and this thing, they can be incredibly complex, these plans. So having scores and scores of conversation and keep explaining the plan and keep explaining the different things that could happen and making adjustments. I mean, it's just a tough thing, but you got to saddle up and just do it. So it's complex. I can tell you that. Not just in terms of how the plan works, but in any plan. So the succession plan, there's going to be some people that are entirely pleased with it, and there's
Right.
going to be some people that are not. And that's probably the worst part, is helping the people who are not really super excited about it understand it and understand how it's going to benefit them and why it's going to work and why it's a good answer. There's no perfect answer, but why it's a good or a great answer.
That's interesting. So first you got to do, obviously, is a lot of hard work. Hard work in terms of the research, in terms of picking a plan. And then from what you're telling me, you've got to have a kind of a bit of a shift in mindset so that you're empowering other people to step into roles that you've occupied for a long period of time. And then you've also got to be able to identify the right people for those positions.
That's right.
So at the end of the day, as you look back on your career and as you look upon the business that you've built, what are you hoping that your legacy will be?
I'm hoping that my legacy will be just as a regular person who was fun to be around, who added a lot of value, who was able to learn a lot from other people and able to teach a lot from other people, that I was a benefit in somebody's life. That would be good enough for me.
Awesome. So in light of having fun, just to ask you a personal question on the way out the door here. What's your favorite vacation spot?
Right now, my favorite vacation spot is Arizona.
Really? How come?
Yeah, I love it there. It's clean. There's plenty of good restaurants. I like to play golf. There's plenty of golf there. And my daughter goes to school there, so I get to see her.
There you go. Bonus: golf, restaurants, and family. What more could you want?
Not a lot.
Awesome. Shone, I really appreciate you joining me on the show today.
All right, Eric. My pleasure. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Construction Genius. Hope you found that 1% of inspiration to help you in the next few days. If you like the show, please give us a 5-star review on iTunes, share it with other construction leaders who you think would benefit, and always remember that the show is brought to you by Kick-Ass Meetings. I've been working with construction leaders since 2004, teaching them how to run extremely effective problem-solving meetings that gets their people collaborating, taps into their creativity. And to get yourself a free copy of the Kick-Ass Meeting Report, go to www.ericanderton.com/kickassmeetings. Grab yourself that free report, read it, use it in your business. You'll find it extremely useful. And thanks again for listening.